Hello, Internet. I'm Hugo.
And I'm Jake.
And this is Unpopular Culture. And we're going to do something a little different, but basically the same.
We do Goosebumps, but this time it's Are You Afraid of the Dark?
If you don't know, Goosebumps was a series in the 90s that was an adaptation from R.L. Stine's popular children's horror fiction novels.
And Are You Afraid of the Dark is pretty much an adaptation of that, but no, without the books, and better.
Yeah, as big of a fan of Goosebumps as I am, I have to admit that Are You Afraid of the Dark is a show that I can enjoy as an adult in not an ironic way, and it actually has some kind of creepy imagery, and it's very interesting.
It's a little campy, but it's nowhere near the shit-tastic levels of Goosebumps.
No.
Because Goosebumps, it's like they just threw shit at a wall and they're like, there's a plot, I guess.
The best thing I can say about Are You Afraid of the Dark is that it seems like everyone who was working on it was trying.
Yeah.
And that's something that Goosebumps sorely lacked. So today we're going to look at one of the arguably creepiest episodes, and that is The Tale of the Ghastly Grinner. So first of all, can I just talk about this opening? It's shorter than Goosebumps, but it's way creepier. I remember as a kid, this intro would come on, and I loved this show, but I'd have to switch the channel and then come back when I thought the intro was done, because it genuinely gave me nightmares.
Yeah, I always liked it a lot better. I mean, obviously the music isn't as good, but it's still very iconic, and maybe a lot of people don't remember it offhand, but when you play it, you're like, oh, I remember my childhood again.
Yeah. This
was the good part. This is the part that wasn't R.L. Stine's doing. And also, I really like the match held up to the words. I thought that was creative.
It's good imagery.
Yeah, and I don't know, and it works with the Midnight Society thing. And if you guys aren't aware, the Midnight Society, every episode is bookended by this group of kids, and they call themselves the Midnight Society. They sneak out of their houses in the middle of the night and build a campfire.
Horribly irresponsible, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
These parents have no idea where their kids are. This is in Canada, by the way, because the show is Canadian, as many older Nick shows were. Yeah. And they all sneak out and have their Canadian meetings, and they talk about horror stories.
Yeah, and I always thought, even as a kid, I always thought that ghost stories were really lame.
Yeah.
And the kids that they got to act these, and some of them look like they're in their mid-20s, like this guy with the glasses. He just looks like he doesn't have a lot of facial hair, but he's like 20 years old.
Well, yeah, that's why they're sneaking out. You gotta, just with older kids.
Yeah.
It's creepy.
But the way they always delivered the stories sounded lame to me almost every time, and, their little skits were always bad. But that was the worst part of the episode, and the good part was when they transitioned into the episode itself. Yeah. And man, this is just superior in every way to Goosebumps.
The stinger on this one for the Midnight Society is they're starting to light their campfire, because there's always a campfire that they're sitting around telling their stories, but the logs are wet, it's rained or something.
Of course, yeah.
And they're saying, let me use that comic book you have in your back pocket. And he's like, no man, it's a graphic novel, I like it, whatever. Which is fair. Who the fuck lights a comic book on fire that you just bought? Whatever.
Right, no shit.
In fairness, it was also in their back pocket, rolled up, which is not the way to do it.
Also, he's like the bully kid anyways. He's the jock that has the nerd friends, but doesn't let anyone know he got the nerd friends.
One of the other girls takes the comic book and is like, what if comic books aren't just stories someone wrote? What if it's like a portal to another world? And I thought to myself, wow, these 12-year-olds have way better drug connections than I do. That's amazing.
What a terrible idea.
Yeah, and as she begins her story, they do what they always do, by the way, which is they throw this dust on the campfire and it goes whoosh.
It's like magic dust.
And if anyone had ever been curious in their childhood, what are they throwing on that fire? Non-dairy creamer. Non-dairy powder creamer. You can do it yourself. I have no idea who figured out that throwing that on a fire would make it do cool things, but thank you.
Maybe that's why it was invented. They're like, oh, it's also all right in coffee.
Maybe. So the story begins when we have this guy named Ethan. Ethan comes into his room, and there's a little narration explaining that he's a comic book artist.
And you can also tell that he clearly listens to a shit ton of Nirvana, because look at him.
I know. Remember in the 90s, like before Columbine happened, and it was funny to have an outcast kid in a trench coat, and it wasn't like, ooh, shit's gonna go down. It's like, he's different than us.
Yeah.
What's the worst that could happen? So he's going through a bunch of letters, because he has apparently sent a bunch of his artwork into different comic book companies, and they're all denial letters. By the way, remember, this kid's like 14 or 15. No shit you're not getting a job at Marvel or DC or even fucking Dark Horse. You're 14, kid.
Even Dark Horse.
So as he's going through these denial letters, he finds one on the floor, and it's an invitation to this new comic book store, and it's called Comic Books Inc.
Ah, it's a pun.
It's not a pun. Oh, is it?
Ink.
I just got it. I
Ink.
just understood it.
Yeah.
I'm really dumb. I'm sorry, 90s me. You probably got that before I did. You did, because 90s. Anyway.
He goes up to it, and it's just it's some lady who looks like she would have been pretty much a red shirt. If she was in like a Terminator movie, she looks like one of those where she's got like the leather jacket and she's trendy, but clearly she's gonna die because it's an action flick. But she's not in an action flick. She's in Are You Afraid of the Dark, so she's safe. And she's also like a catalyst for the plot.
Yeah, she recognizes Ethan, even though, he's 14. She's like, yeah, everyone knows about you.
And this is like pre-internet stuff, really, so there should be no precedent for her knowing this child.
She's a fucking crazy person and says to him, your art is just like this guy. His name's Sylvester Uncas, which is a terrible fake name. And she says, he did this comic book called The Ghastly Grinner, and there was only one issue ever made, and he disappeared before he could ever finish the comic.
And your artwork's just like it. Here, have this free comic.
Which is apparently the last in existence of that one, which, if it was a famous comic book, wouldn't that be worth a lot of money? I get that there's mystical stuff going on, but, like, he doesn't, so wouldn't he question the fact that she's giving him this very, very expensive thing?
I don't know. But the really interesting part about this whole thing is the entire comic book scene. We'll get a couple shots of them in the interior of the comic book shop. Tons of licensed material, like X-Men, X-Force, Spider-Man, Superman.
War Machine gets a shout-out.
Good old War Machine. Don Cheadle's bringing that shit back.
So back at school, because apparently there's a school in this, the teacher's teaching them about microwaves by having a glass box that's essentially functions as a microwave, and he's explaining how they work. In the back of the class, we have Ethan, who's reading the comic book behind another book. What I want to know is, why did you wait until school the next day to read a comic book? If you've ever gotten a comic book, like a single issue, it takes like 10 minutes to read, if that. They're very short, generally speaking.
Wouldn't he have been excited to get a new comic book? He's clearly hugely into comic books. So I think he would have felt like, I'm going to stay up all night and read this fucking comic book and copy the art because I'm an artist. And it just doesn't make any sense for him to do it at school. At all.
Also in the class, there's this nerdy girl who's the stereotypical 90s nerd, wears glasses, answers all the teacher's questions to the point where the teacher is annoyed that they're the only one who has their hand up.
And if you're thinking to yourself, is that Sheldon's girlfriend from The Big Bang Theory? No, it's not, but I thought so too. So the teacher catches Ethan reading the book because he's hiding it upside down behind a physics textbook anyways. The teacher in 90s, I can do whatever the fuck I want to students fashion. He takes his personal property and drops it in a fish tank that he has.
Yeah.
I don't know why he has the fish tank. And then he says, no, this isn't one of a kind. It's none of a kind. Actually, it is. It's the only one.
That's a good zing, though.
But it's not. It's not. He's just...
I wish I could be a teacher that's just a dick to students and destroys their personal property and also comes up with, like, 80s action movie type catchphrases before I do stuff.
I had a teacher when they taught computer class. That's how old I am. There was an urban legend that surrounded him where there was a picture of his penis that circulated the school. And it was nicknamed Gus. And if you said the name Gus, he would flip his shit. And one time he broke a kid's phone because he said, hey, something about Gus.
What if someone's name was actually Gus?
I mean, there was no Gus's.
Oh.
There were no Gus's.
I feel like that teacher should have been fired.
He was a Green Beret.
Oh, well,
he was a little crazy.
Oh, I see. You can't fire
He got
that
bought
person.
out like a year later.
That makes sense. So Ethan goes home, and his parents are pieces of shit.
Yeah, and it's kind of the joke. It's very look at the garbage 90s parents that exist nowadays. So they're just sitting there, they're eating only junk food, and they plug in a bunch of shit to outlets.
Later she talks about, this is awesome, and it speaks really poorly to my character, that she went, hey, you want some pizza waffles? And I went, holy shit, are pizza waffles a thing? I want a pizza waffle.
It was a joke about the shitty food that was coming out back then. And still is, but it's basically a bagel bite joke.
I know, but I want a waffle pizza.
Now I do too. Like, don't get me wrong, I would totally eat an Eggo waffle with pizza stuff on it.
Yeah.
I'd devour that in a second.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
We can just do it.
We can pause this and then just go do that.
Okay. So Ethan goes into the kitchen and he starts making popcorn. This pissed Jake off because I guess he does it wrong.
He pops the popcorn, and then you know how you grab like the corners where it's sealed and you pull them apart and then it just opens? Instead he takes like the middle of it and rips it and then sets it down and doesn't even go into the bag. What the fuck? Did you not want the popcorn then? Why did you make the popcorn? Why are you wasting popcorn, Ethan? I'm glad bad things happen to you.
He also decides in his infinite wisdom to put the comic in the microwave to try and dry it off. I have two problems with this. Firstly, it's hours since it was in that fish tank. I'm gonna assume it's dry.
Yeah.
Two, you can't put stuff like that in the microwave. It'll get set on fire.
Don't do that, Ethan. Don't do that. And I know you don't have very good responsible adults in your life to show you the way and how not to be a piece of shit, but maybe rise above that once in a while and wear something other than black and listen to something other than grunge and have a social life instead of making your own shitty comics.
So Ethan goes upstairs as the paper in the microwave is going, because he's just so irresponsible he wants to see his house burned down. He gets a call from that nerdy girl from school who's trying to hit on him, I guess. Maybe
He's
wants
got a
to,
thing for nerdy girls. I get it. Velma was hot.
Come over, Netflix and chill, whatever. And as they're talking, there's a big explosion, and he sets the phone down to go check what's going on. And over the phone, she actually has a good line.
House just explode?
He goes downstairs and he grabs the comic out of the microwave, and there's a hole blown in the middle of it. Do you get it yet? Do you get what's gonna happen, guys?
There's a nice little silhouette of the cartoon character going through the wall, too. Reminded me a little bit of The Mask, how there was like a cartoon character in real life.
Yeah, so microwaves create things from comic books to come alive, or specifically this one, but it seems to have more of an implication that microwaves can do weird shit.
Well, science, man.
You know.
Science and comics and dimensions or something. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is just the last things his brain thought about as his family asphyxiated to death because of his poor decisions.
So all of a sudden his mom appears, and she's been attacked by the Grinner. It's a little bit like the Jack Nicholson Joker, where they make him smile and it kind of drives him crazy or whatever, but also this gross shit drips out of their mouth.
Yeah. It actually is kind of all right. She's actually the worst of all of them that get affected.
Yeah.
But his dad is sitting at the couch in just a second. He'll run away from his mom and go over there. And he is like, what, you don't like jokes or some shit, some crappy line about jokes. You get it. Because the guy's a jester. We understand. But he looks better. He has like a cool thing going on. It's like, it's actually getting kind of creepy.
Ethan runs out of the house, and he runs into the girl he was on the phone with. I guess she lives like 3 houses down because she was there immediately.
I guess, yeah.
She asks what's going on. Ethan, being of sound mind and in the 90s, says,
I don't know how, but I think I just brought this guy to life.
That's a reasonable response. In fairness, he's right.
Yeah.
But if this were any other situation, he'd come off like a fucking crazy person. Luckily, the nerdy girl's parents also have some sort of dinner date with these people, I guess.
So, they have like some food that they bring over as like an offering.
The thing is, though, her parents look like they're actually dressed pretty
They're
nicely.
not the types of people that would hang out together.
They would not mix.
Also, when they answer the door, they're in like their PJs, and they're like, yeah, I want to come inside and meet the uncle or whatever, Uncle Ben or Bob or something. And they go in on purpose. They go into the house of those people.
Clearly, they get, jokerized, basically.
They all have blue shit on them.
Ethan tells her they gotta get back to the comic book shop. Okay, reasonable enough. They get on a bus, an empty bus, and they start looking at the comic book that has the hole blown in it, and they see that both their parents are in the comic book, and then they turn another page, and they are also in the comic book on the bus where they are right now. They look up to the bus driver.
And he does the coolest shit.
See, now, I'll give this show this.
Okay.
Legitimately somewhat creepy. This is not something Goosebumps would do. Goosebumps would do 7 fake-out scares where it's like a cat or a parent.
Yeah.
This one at least was like, no, here's actually kind of creepy
he's in
imagery
charge,
for children.
and you guys are gonna die in a bus accident. But it's really cool, and this is the separation between the Goosebumps for sure. They're not afraid to actually scare children.
Yeah. So the bus stops for some reason. They get very lucky and aren't murdered. The bus driver slumps over it with stuff coming out of his mouth. I'm going to assume he's dead. They never say anyone dies from this, but if anyone dies, it's him. He's dead. Bus driver dead.
I hope that bus driver got more roles after that. He did a really good job being a crazy person.
So then they go back to the comic book store. The weird owner girl explains that the comic books aren't just books, they're windows into other dimensions or something.
Wow.
Sure, whatever.
Okay.
And she also further explains that the comic book writer who disappeared was actually her father, and she found Ethan because he had a similar enough comic book style that she wanted him to come and finish some of those pages to try and kill the Grinner or whatever.
That's dumb, but just when we're getting into the most boring part of the plot, the Grinner shows up and drips his drool on things, and he picks the lady up by her neck.
Yeah.
And he'll do that again to, like, the teacher.
Actually, really creepy imagery, too. I'm not afraid of clowns like some people are. No. I've never totally understood that.
Kind of a cross between a jester and a clown.
But I can understand how this particular one, especially if you were afraid of clowns, would be creepy as fuck.
Yeah.
They run away, and the girl says, we gotta do something with microwaves, and Ethan's like, I don't know, but she's like, no, I'm the nerdy girl, though. We gotta do my plan first, so that later later your plan can succeed after mine fails. So they do that. They go to the school and build like this microwave gun. It's made out of parts that the teacher was using in his microwave thing.
It's pretty dumb. And then the teacher walks in and
It's supposed to be kind of a fake out scare, I think, but it was a double fake out scare because the guy actually is there, the Grinner.
But shout out to the most 90s prop that I've ever seen. It was the giant pink erasers, the parallelogram erasers. You remember those? And it was the big one for big mistakes. Yeah, that was awesome. All we need is gel pens and snap bracelets, and we got the trifecta.
They turn on the microwave gun thing. It doesn't do anything, and they're attacked by the guy, and it's actually kind of weird and creepy. And then they escape, but they don't really show how they escape. They just transpose an image of the guy's face over them running away.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you let them go. I don't know if they got away. Was it the microwave gun? They never explain. Falling short on this one. Are you afraid of the dark? I'm not impressed. So now they're back at the comic book shop, and they decide to go with the plan the girl had before she got taken by the Grinner, and he's going to try and finish these drawings. Now there's a montage of him finishing the drawings.
Super weird shots.
It's weird because it looks like he's tracing and coloring in, but he's not actually doing any artistry himself. Now, when you're doing comic books, there's different jobs. You can be an artist, you can be a penciler, or you can be a colorist. There's different, things to do. And some people do all of them, but it was just strange that this kid who was supposed to be such a good artist, he didn't do any of that. He colored the stuff in and penciled, which are skills in and of themselves. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that's not a skill. I'm just saying thought he was going to draw something.
Like, what they did was they showed his face, and then they went down to show the comic book stuff. Obviously, the actor you got isn't also a comic book artist. Just have the comic book artist start drawing shit really quick. Like, it's going to take a second. You go to any comic book shop and be like, hey, do you have a comic guy around that knows how to draw relatively well? We'll pay him $10 to come do a thing with his hand. Like, that would have been so easy, but they didn't.
So the Grinner finally catches up with them. I'm not sure how he's getting around because sometimes it seems instantaneous, but other times it seems like he has to travel because he knows where they're going. Scooter.
It was a Razor scooter. It was the 90s. Again. You have to pay attention, okay?
Okay, now I'm paying attention. Sorry.
Razor scooter.
He shows up, but it's just in the nick of time because Ethan has already drawn himself as a superhero. Not very well drawn. It's better than anything I can do, I'll give it credit, but for all the talking up they've been doing about this kid, underwhelmed. So, I guess Ethan goes into the comic book with the Grinner, and this was an amazing budgetary move by this show. They said, we want a climax fight that's like a superhero fight, but we can't afford that, so let's just do a series of images as if it's already, as if it's happening.
Yeah, and they do this, and it's, it's decent artistry, it's okay. Why didn't they have that guy who drew that do the hand things?
I know, I don't
Come
understand.
on, you had him on your roll there, your payroll there.
Finally, it looks like he's getting beaten, and by the way, the guy who originally wrote the comic book is apparently trapped in the pages with Ethan now, along with the daughter.
What's he been doing?
Just chilling out in comic book land, being friends with Spider-Man, probably.
You think so?
Yeah.
Do you get to eat comic book food? Because there's very rarely any food in comic books.
Oh, there's plenty. He'll be fine.
Is it good?
I don't know.
I hope he wasn't in one of those really dark comic books like...
Sin City?
Yeah.
That'd be bad. Anyway, he's about to get beat, and the 90s girl pulls out her giant eraser from earlier and erases the Grinner from the pages, and this defeats him somehow.
That's all we had to do?
Because they could have done that earlier, but it works, I guess.
Yeah.
And they all come out. Ethan's fine, the dad's fine, the girl's fine, and then we get a little epilogue where it turns out he's become a famous comic book artist, and his parents are talking about how they've always supported him, even though they haven't. They showed him earlier being dicks. Yeah. So he still has dick parents, I guess, but he's signing all these comic books. Can I just point out, though, the comic book he's selling is literally called Ethan. I don't care if you have a great comic book with awesome art. No one's buying a comic book just titled Ethan.
Especially not with that kid's face.
No.
No, he didn't have a good face.
And that's the story of how a 14-year-old became a famous comic book artist, which has never happened and probably never will.
Fun fact, this kid was in Billy Madison.
He was also in Goosebumps. He was in the...
Cool.
He was the guy who put on the Haunted Mask in the Haunted Mask Part 2.
Wasn't he also in Part 3?
There was no Part 3.
I thought he was in both of them.
He was in both. He was in the original Haunted Mask as one of the bullies, and then
I'm
in
thinking
the second
of the
one,
mummy, or the dummy.
The dummy, yep. Dummy had three parts, and then they had the Bride of the Living Dummy. This guy, though, was the Haunted Mask old guy. Thanks, everyone. If you have any episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark or Goosebumps or whatever that you want us to watch, please say so in the comments. This one was a pretty good one, actually. The difference between Goosebumps and this is that Goosebumps you have to enjoy is kind of a silly, it's not very good. Yeah. Are You Afraid of the Dark?
You can watch that. You can sit down and get a couple episodes out while you're doing something else and actually enjoy them.
It's still silly, don't get me wrong, and the production values, I'm actually a little impressed by them for the budget they must have been on, but goddamn.
Oh, yeah.
Actually an excellent show. So, other than that, you can check us out on Twitter at The Real Unpop, because some dick has unpopular culture already.
You
Whatever.
can subscribe to the channel and get more of these. We've done some Goosebumps. We've done some movie reviews like Jurassic World and Terminator Genesis. And on the 19th, Doctor Who comes out. So if you're into Doctor Who, we'll be doing our Who Cares series throughout the season. And maybe some Power Ranger stuff next month, right at the beginning.
Also, we have a Patreon now, so if you want to, there's a couple different levels. I think the top level now is you get to tell us an episode of a show to watch, and then we'll do it in a similar style to this or the Goosebumps. There is one rule, however, or there's two rules, I guess. You got to give us a couple options, because we will pick one that you pick, but, you know, at the end of the day,
Give us some creative leeway. Yeah.
And two, no anime. Never any anime. Not gonna do anime.
They're really heavy and just we won't like it and you'll hate us for it. Also, I'm not interested. You know, no porn. We can't do porn.
Aw.
I mean, you could show us porn.
I mean, if you want us to do a porn and then we cut out the porn parts, I guess we could do that.
But someone always does porn edits.
Yeah, that's fair.
It'd be weird to watch porn with you.
I've seen enough dicks and vaginas. I'm good.
Well, it's not like I'm gonna get aroused
Nah.
while watching. I just don't want to share that with you.
No, that's not a place our friendship needs to go anytime soon. Like 20 years from now when we're burnt out and we got nothing else going for us.
Oh yeah, we'll just like touch each other and
Sure.
first one to have a reaction at all wins because it means we're still alive.
So thanks everyone. Until next time, I'm Hugo.
And I am Jake.
And this has been Unpopular Culture, looking at Are You Afraid of the Dark?